Welcome everyone to another episode of Slasher Scotty. I am your host, Scotty McCoy, and boy, do I have a surprise for all of you. I have on Zoom with me right now Thomas Smith, and he is the director, the writer, producer, and special effects artist for the upcoming fan film Valentine Bluffs. Hey Thomas, how you doing?
What's up, Scotty? How you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm so glad to have you on. I had a couple people from the film on, and I'm so glad that you can join the ranks and start promoting this movie. So I guess the first question I got for you, how did you get your start into filmmaking?
Well, thanks for having me.
Yep.
I started doing it when I went to special effects school. I
Mhm.
went to Tom Savini Special Effects School
Nice.
in Pittsburgh in 2011.
Okay.
So I started doing like special effects and stuff like that.
Hmm.
And then that got me into like, working with a bunch of filmmakers. And
Yeah.
I was like, I got a bunch of ideas and stories. I'd like to try to do something myself. And I just hooked up with different people who I worked with. I asked them like, hey, you want to help me make my films or whatever. And it was kind of like, a
Nice.
collaboration on stuff like that. So it's pretty cool.
That's awesome. Have you met Tom Savini at the school itself?
Oh yeah. Yeah. He was one of the teachers there.
Nice.
He comes in like, he would come in, like drop in once in a while and
Nice.
critique your stuff and talk to you about your stuff and do like portfolio reviews and stuff like that. But he's not like the main teacher there.
Mhm.
The main teacher there was Jerry Gergley, who
Okay.
was amazing.
Nice.
Um, wow, I forget. Sean Ranzio was like a prop teacher
Okay.
there. Will Ritter was a teacher there.
Nice.
Chris Patrick. Uh, we had a couple of them. Then we had like people would come in, like Steve Johnson would come in and do like seminars and stuff like that.
Nice.
Uh, so met a lot of really cool people up there.
That's
Hearing a lot
awesome.
of the stories, and they all worked on like huge film projects, so
Hmm.
it was always fun to like hear stories from them.
That's awesome. So the Valentine Bluffs, what you're coming out with, can you, for those that are unaware, can you like tell us what this movie is about?
Yeah, so I watched some of your podcasts and I was like checking it out, and I seen the one. Actually, I just watched the one with Peter Anthony the other
Nice.
day, and that was good.
Yeah.
Um, it's hard like to give you any kind of like details without giving stuff away because
Right.
this film isn't out yet.
Hmm.
But basically, it kind of tells a story about TJ Haneker, like 40 years later, kind of deal. Um, he goes back into the town of Valentine Bluffs where he
Right.
tried to get away, and and then things start happening. When he comes back into town, he was kind of run out of town by like a mayor, and they start like, oh, if he's out of town, they can start doing the dancing and having a good time and celebrating Valentine's again.
Nice.
And when he comes back, things start happening again.
Hmm. Nice.
So
Nice. So, go
it's
ahead.
really hard to like give. I don't want
Yeah.
to give anything away because
Yeah.
once I say like one thing or someone says one thing, people are going, "Oh, I know who the killer is" right away.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. So, what made you decide to do a fan film on My Bloody Valentine?
Yeah. So it was so funny because we used to talk about it and like, I don't think I'd ever do a fan film, because um, you can't profit off it for one,
Right.
So and most of the films that we make, we fund ourselves.
Hmm.
My film Hunting for Justice, I funded that like all myself, my short film. And then like I worked on other films where I was like a producer where I put money in towards it,
Yeah.
or I worked on the special effects for people and put like put the materials in for the producer credits and stuff like that. Um, this one was a little bit different because like we when we decided, when I came to the conclusion I wanted to do one, I had an idea for My Bloody Valentine and Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and I had access to a meat house.
Yeah.
I was like, a Texas Chainsaw Massacre would be really cool. That's one of my favorites. But
Right.
My Bloody Valentine, I live in like a coal mine town
Okay.
in Northeast Pennsylvania. So
Nice.
it was like, all right, that's like my favorite. It's one of my favorite films,
Yeah.
and it hasn't been done. There's already been like, some Texas Chainsaw Massacres, and obviously like the Friday the 13th fan films where
Hmm.
tons of them were out there.
Okay.
Um, so I was like, oh, we're gonna do something that that hasn't been made. Um, and then I reached out, like I had an idea. I had like an idea for a beginning and an end, and nothing really in the middle of it.
Right.
Um, And it was just so weird how this all came about because, again, when we make films, it's kind of like a skeleton crew, like very few people in the crew, and we're like working like 18 hours a night, trying to, and in such a short period of time, with like very like no money, you know. And that's how I thought this was going to be. I was like, oh, we'll do like a 15-minute fan film kind of deal. And the first time I thought about it, I was like, man, I remember being up in Horror Hound like 4 or 5 years before I had this idea. And I got a picture taken with a cosplayer wearing the miner costume. And I remember it like being really detailed. It was like one of the better cosplays that I've seen. And doing like special effects, I'm very well in the detail. So everything's got to be pretty much like perfect. So I was like, I remember that, and I started like venturing and saying, looking for this person who had no idea who this person was. And I started like reaching out to like convention people I go to, like people I knew like from going to conventions and vending at conventions. And one person just like reached out to me and was like, hey, you should check out this guy, Chuck Ryan. If it was up at Horror Hound, it's probably him. So I found him on Facebook and I messaged him. We exchanged numbers and I called him. I was like, hey, dude, I got this. You don't know me, but I'm a filmmaker, special effects artist. I have an idea to do a fan film for My Bloody Valentine. And at first, it was really weird because when I got the phone with him, I told my wife, I was like, man, that was a really cool idea. I gave him a really good pitch. He didn't sound excited. Like he didn't want to do it. And then when I talked to him later on, he was like telling me how excited he really was, but he was playing it cool because he didn't really know who I was. He didn't know what kind of film we were going to do, like what kind of filmmakers we were. So I sent him like, a copy of my film Hunting for Justice. And he got back to me and he was like, oh, you guys are the real deal. Like this is going to look good, right? And I was like, yeah. And at that time, again, it was just going to be a few of my friends, people like that. So we started communicating back and forth just a phone, and he lives in Wisconsin. I live in Pennsylvania. So we just like, became friends over the phone. And for about maybe 6 or 7 months was like going back and forth. And first he was like, oh, he was like, do you have a script? And I was like, no. But I was like, give me 2 weeks and I'll write one up for you. And like 2 or 3 weeks later, I sent him a script. And that's when he was just like, oh, I'm on board. I want to do this. And that's pretty much where it started. And then he knew some people and he was like, hey, I can, I might be able to get Fright Rags involved with it because he did some work with them as a sponsor. And then once they were on board, and then we picked up another sponsor that wanted to do it. Nightmare Christie, like Nightmare Toys, Christy from Nightmare Toys. She was like, I want to be a part of it. And things just started like snowballing really fast, and it got much bigger than what I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be like a 15-minute short film with me and some of my friends, and it turned out to be this big, giant project, and where, we're like, wow, how are we going to pay for this? Like, we can't make a movie ourselves, without any kind of funding, like, for the kind of film that like we want to show people, for like the idea I had on the script. And that's when we started talking about doing the whole like crowdfunding, and I never did one before. So we just reached out to a few people who were really cool and gave us a lot of like, advice on them and what to do and what not to do. Dave Kerr was one of them, if you know Dave Kerr. He was a big help and behind the scenes on like helping us answering a lot of our questions, because like I said, we didn't know anything about it. I worked on a film before that was involved with an Indiegogo, and it failed miserably. And I was like, these things don't work. People ain't going to give us money. You don't know who we are. And then we put together such a really good team. An actor who I worked with on a couple of films, Roland Keller, he was telling me last summer on a film set that I was directing that he wanted to be, behind the camera and work, and he wanted to come on as a producer. So he came on, and us three together kind of put it all together. And like I said, this thing put the Indiegogo campaign. Then we got Corey Kaufman involved with it as he's like a graphic designer. Awesome. He made the campaign look really nice.
That's awesome. Yeah, and
So
like if you're ever gonna film a fan film in Northeast PA, like My Bloody Valentine is probably the most perfect with it being coal region.
yeah, and just up here's got like a history on coal
Yep,
mines.
yep.
There was like a mine explosion here like 50 years ago or something.
Centralia.
Yeah.
Yep,
So
yep.
um
So a lot of stuff that would really benefit for it. I know I'm originally from Ashland, Pennsylvania. I visit there every other weekend or so. But I live in Baltimore now. But yeah, the history is rich with coal and mines and everything.
yeah, are
Like,
you familiar with, I think the mine that we shot in was in Ashland.
okay.
The Pioneer,
Yeah, Pioneer Tunnel. I'm about maybe 3 minutes from there.
that's
Five
where
minutes
we
from there.
shot
Yep.
that's where we shot the mine scene.
Nice. I didn't know that.
Yeah,
It's
they
awesome.
we
Yeah,
went in there.
I've been there. I've been there so many times.
Really?
Yep.
Oh, then you know
Yep.
what it's like in there, so that's where we
Yep.
shot it.
Yep. Absolutely.
Mm,
It's great that you filmed there. I mean, it's good for the local, the local region too of just not just Schuylkill County, but Pennsylvania as a whole, especially our northeastern Pennsylvania is a lot like really known for drugs and all that. And like
yeah,
that's why even with when I started up Gravestone Films, for it was more of just to get people not to think badly of our county and our area. And I mean,
yeah,
it's good that people like yourself and me, and like all of us are like creating this, art in Schuylkill County and in Northeast PA.
yeah. It was so weird. We shot in so many, like that was like the biggest issue with the film. We had such a like tight shooting schedule, but we had so many location moves.
Yeah.
We shot in Jersey, we shot in Ashland, and we shot up where I'm at near like the Scranton area.
Okay.
Um, so that was like the hardest thing. Like
Yeah.
a lot of like different locations we had, and um, yeah, it was kind of a nightmare to deal with.
Yeah. Yeah. Usually when we do our films, it's like because we like filming locally and we use a lot of local talent. We
Mhm.
usually like when we're writing a script, we think the first thing we think of is where can we film this because there's not that much that is there, and we don't want to travel all over the place because in order to get a good movie like My Bloody Valentine, type of movie, like you want to film it in areas that are good, like that are rich and that have a nice location, a nice area. And the Pioneer Tunnel is a perfect mine to shoot in.
Yeah, it was crazy how we got that. It's like you would think that would be so hard to get. I
Yeah.
believe that was probably the easiest one we
Nice.
got. It was
Nice.
like I think Rowan made a phone call to them, and they got back to us like by the end of the day,
Yeah,
and they're like,
they're
"Okay,
usually really
yeah,
good at that too. So I'm glad. I didn't know that they allowed to film there, but that's actually really really cool that they allowed that.
yeah." Well, we weren't the first ones. They were shoot like they told us they shot like documentaries up in
Yep.
there
Yep.
for like the Discovery Channel,
Hmm.
stuff like that.
Yep.
It was funny because they were like, most of the stuff that comes in here is usually born. He's like,
Right.
we're excited to see a horror film, you
Yep.
know, because we were like, hey, there's going to be blood in there, and
Yep.
they're like, oh, just come in and do your thing.
That's awesome.
Really, really cool people because we had a deadline in there. We were only allowed in there for 8 hours.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
the guy let us stay in there longer. Like
Nice.
he was like, you guys can finish and do whatever you want to do.
That's awesome.
Um, but it was our first day of shooting
Hmm.
in the mine. It was like 90 degrees in August.
Yeah.
And you've been in there, so you probably know.
Yeah.
Like, as soon as you open up the doors, it's like
Yeah.
40 degrees and it's cold,
Yeah.
and it's like, wow, like that's so crazy how that
Yeah.
even happens.
Yeah.
Um, I remember being like really cold and wet and damp.
Yeah.
It was real, like it was as real as you can get.
Yep.
Uh,
Yep.
if we had millions of dollars, we couldn't have built that set.
Yeah,
So
exactly. And you used a real area. It wasn't a set, it was an on location.
yeah, we did build some sets in
Yeah.
the studio, like we got a studio,
Okay.
but this was like amazing. It
Yeah.
was a really fun day. It was our first day of shooting.
Nice.
It was it was kind of weird, like, oh, we're gonna pick the hardest thing to shoot on the first day, and
Right.
we went there and shot. And uh, you know, in filmmaking, I don't know if I've ever worked on a film where it was perfect.
Right.
There's always something going wrong. Things happen.
Yeah.
Well, that like we got a text message at midnight, and we were like, our call time was like 7 a.m.
Yeah.
at midnight, and the sound person couldn't make it.
Yeah.
Kind of bailed out on the film.
Yeah.
and was like, wow. So like the biggest day that we're going to shoot, we didn't have a sound person. And then we had a makeup artist coming on to assist me because I was like kind of concentrating on the directing part, and we had other people come in for like help me do the special effects makeup.
Yeah.
And she didn't show up, so it was like,
Yeah.
wow. So like I ended up doing makeup, and it took time to do that. Where it was like it was hard, it was difficult, but we got through it. And that's why it was really cool that the guy let us stay there a little longer.
Right.
Yeah. But it was cool. It was good, and it was a really fun shooting there.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So is the Indiegogo still going on? Is it in demand at all, or is it done?
Yeah, no, we had our first Indiegogo campaign go in demand. We
Okay.
actually just shut that down like maybe last week.
Okay.
Then we opened up a post-production one
Okay.
because of the issues like we had when we had this scheduled. It was all scheduled. It was all locked in, and the reason we had, we raised up, enough money to get the film done and post and everything that we had to.
Yep.
And then, just things happen where we had to reschedule. For one, we had to reschedule a whole month because we lost a whole entire crew. We had a crew that was like set and done. We were hiring them outside. We never worked with them before. Things happened where we couldn't work it out with them. Where it was done. So like 3 weeks before we were ready to shoot, we had to look for a new crew, like everybody. So our DP came on. He was kind of new for it. So we didn't have like any kind of like production meetings with anybody new on set. It was like, hey, this is what we're looking to do. But it all worked. Like I said, I'm a firm believer things happen for a reason. I think if we would have had the people who were supposed to be on, we wouldn't have had the film that we're going to have. And I'm expecting everybody to really like this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I look forward to seeing this movie. Like, when do you plan on releasing Valentine Bluffs, and where can it be viewed once it's available for those that want to see it?
Okay. Yeah, so it was scheduled to be done a lot earlier because like I said, we had to push back the schedule for a month, and then that cost us to lose actors. So we had to recast them, and that pushed it back a little bit. We lost out on we were paying for air flights for people to come in.
Right.
When we had to reschedule, we didn't get our money back for there. Like we had Airbnbs that were really costly.
Wow.
They cover the whole crew had one, and the cast had one. And then when we had to reschedule, we weren't getting our money back for this stuff. So that's kind of why we're doing the second campaign now.
Okay.
It's new, it's fresh. We have some old perks up there, but we have a lot of new ones on there.
Okay.
So this is the first time I said this because I don't we never really came out and said when it was going to be out there. But I believe it'll probably be done in the summer.
Okay.
So
awesome.
Right now it's in post, it's being edited, and then it's going to go into the music composing, sound mixing, stuff like that, and then the color. We have a color correction. It's going to color correct the film for us.
Nice. So for the other Indiegogo, the second Indiegogo that's going on, if somebody wants to donate to this Indiegogo, what are some perks they can get, and where can they find this Indiegogo campaign?
You can go on our Facebook pages, Valentine Bluffs fan film.
Okay.
You just go on Indiegogo, My Bloody Valentine fan film, or Valentine Bluffs, My Bloody Valentine fan film. Okay. And we have a lot of perks up there from the old campaign, like the Blu-rays, the Fright Rag shirts, DVDs. We even had some VHSs, and then little statues that I sculpted a minor bust. That we have up there. They're kind of limited, and we have a bunch of artists that came in to help out that are that are making stuff for us too. We have a lot of sponsors they came in and they helped out, and they were donating or giving us something to put out there for the perks. And some of the new stuff that we have up there, a new version of a pin, a gold plated enamel pin. The one that just came out yesterday, I think was really cool. It's like a baseball t-shirt. Nice. You ever see the baseball 3/4 shirts?
Yeah. Yep.
They're oh man, I'm terrible with names. I think his name is Clint Tacey, I believe his name is.
Yeah.
His company is making them for us, and
Okay.
you get like a bundle package with like 10 pins,
Nice.
stickers, and a shirt. And it's basically like the sign, like the Valentine Bluff sign on the shirt. It was pretty cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and like I said, we have a bunch of new stuff coming that we haven't even put out there yet that we're working on. So yeah, a lot of cool perks. You know, I want them all. I can't afford them.
Sounds like a plan. So anybody that wants to see this film, obviously follow them on social media. If you want, what social media accounts is it on?
We have Twitter, we have Instagram, Slasher app. We're on the Slasher app.
Okay.
Facebook. But it's all like if you just like Google, you know, Valentine Bluffs, you know, fan film.
Yeah.
You should come up. And then, like I said, same thing with the Indiegogo campaign.
Awesome. Awesome. So anybody watching this, give them, you know, show them some love and donate to the Indiegogo if you can. If you can't do it because funds are tough, that's okay as well. It doesn't cost you a thing to share it. So share the Indiegogo, and maybe your share could lead into a couple more donations for them as well. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I thank you so much, Thomas, for joining me.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
No problem. Thank you so much. And you have a great rest of your day.
You too.
All right. Bye.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, bye.